Well, while the central narrow focus of this year's NATO summit is the move for allies to spend from 2% of GDP to 5% of GDP on defence, very much the announcement by US President Donald Trump this morning that there was to be a ceasefire between Israel and Iran has been dominating the discussions, at least on the sidelines. I caught up this morning with Dutch Defence Minister Ruben Brekelmans, and I asked him whether the world was safer now since the United States and Israel struck Iran.
That we take the nuclear threat of Iran very serious. We have seen that Israel and also the United States have said it's enough for us. We want to intervene. And I think that's what we should do now. Pressure Iran and pressure others to sit at the table and to negotiate.
Would you pressure Israel to negotiate?
As well. It's important that all parties that are involved are willing to negotiate. So we will pressure everyone, every actor involved to de-escalate and to sit at the table.
This summit is quite a contrast to last year, where Ukraine was really front and centre.
I think Ukraine is crucial. I just announced a new support package of 175 million for Ukraine. I also announced that we signed 4 big contracts with Ukrainian companies that are going to produce drones. It's a total of 500 million with hundreds of thousands of drones that are going to be produced. So Ukraine is as crucial as ever. But of course, we know that the position of the United States has changed. And therefore, also here at the NATO summit, the main topic, of course, is the 5% is this historic step for our defense.
And as we heard there from Dutch Defence Minister Ruben Brekelmans, the US policy in Ukraine has changed, and very much we'll see that at this NATO summit over the next few days. The presence and the prioritisation of Ukraine is very much in contrast to last year, where there was even a discussion about Ukraine eventually joining NATO. But as we've heard from the United States over the past few months, Ukraine is no longer seen by the US as inextricable when it comes to future NATO security. Shona Murray, Euronews, The Hague.
NATO shifts focus as US under Trump retreats from leading role on Ukraine. European NATO allies are grappling with the fact that the US no longer views success in Ukraine as pivotal to NATO security. Meanwhile, the situation on the battlefield is as threatening as ever, with NATO officials warning of a difficult summer ahead for Ukrainian forces. All 32 NATO allies are meeting in The Hague for the annual Leaders Summit, where NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte told reporters that Russia remains the most significant and direct threat facing the alliance. But in contrast to last year, the focus on Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine is notably diminished from formal discussions. Instead, the summit is pursuing a narrow ambition of pushing for allies to commit to spending 5% of GDP on defense. We know that the position of the United States has changed, and therefore also here at the NATO summit. Dutch Defence Minister Ruben Brekelmans told Iguado World News. The main topic, of course, is the 5% is anew. This historic step for our defence. But Ukraine remains equally important to us, he said. Ukrainian President Zelensky is attending the dinner at the Netherlands, King Willem-Alexander, alongside leaders, and is also expected to meet with President Trump on the sidelines of the summit. However, this year he won't be present at the North Atlantic Council of Heads of State and Government. In contrast, at last year's NATO summit under the Biden administration, Ukraine was given irreversible assurances of a path to membership. Allies assured Kyiv that it was on an indestructible bridge to join the alliance. Trump signaled he wanted the indestructible bridge off the table from the start. Jason Israel, former member of the Biden administration's National Security Council and Senior Director for Defense, told Iguado World News, "If I was Ukraine, of course I'd be nervous about how this is playing out at the moment," he said. There's a growing acceptance that the US, although still providing Ukraine with vital intelligence, will no longer provide Ukraine with lethal weapons similar to that donated by the Biden administration. The real issue is that the US does not see Ukrainian security as essential to European security, and our European allies do so, said Kurt Volker, former US representative to Ukraine in the last Trump administration. Europe feels that if Putin is allowed to prevail in Ukraine, or if Ukraine does not survive as a sovereign, independent state, they are at risk. And that is a big security threat for Europe and NATO, he said ahead of the summit at an event organized by the Center for European Policy Analysis (CEPA). Europe sees the need to support Ukraine as integral to our security through NATO. The US simply doesn't see it that way, said Volker. At the same time, NATO officials warn Russia is continuing to make gains around Sumy Oblast and eastern Ukraine, although their assessment doesn't predict Ukraine will be encircled. Instead, a high attrition rate and a slow, protracted conflict is expected to continue. This is despite the remarkably high casualty rate. NATO says Russia's troop losses have surpassed 1 million since the start of the full-scale invasion. Russia is currently taking 1,100 daily casualties, down from peak in January of 1,500, they said. Like and subscribe for more. Thanks.